Hello, learners. Welcome back to this segment of ours. It is literally a continuation of what we've been doing earlier on. So today's class, basically, it is just a concept that I want us basically to look at from the question or exams that were recently done. That is, of course, it was done last week, right? For December 2023 exams. So in this case, our main focus basically would be what we've been doing actually, and what Mwalimu has always been teaching us, right? It's only that this time around you're doing a question that was tested recently, okay? So this is financial management, and basically the concept that I want us to handle literally is under capital budgeting decisions. Under capital budgeting decisions, a very important topic that I've always been mentioning that we should always be very thorough with. So the concept today, I'm going to share this question, December 2023, question number 1, and these are what basically was tested. This is what I want us to handle. Question number 1. I believe that you guys can be able to see this question. It was tested, of course, last sitting. So this question, a good examiner basically was testing us in part B mostly. Part A we've already conducted, or rather we've already worked it out. Part B of that question, the examiner was testing us in relation to capital budgeting decisions. If you can clearly see that case was basically capital budgeting decision. And see how many marks you're given? 12 marks. You're given 12 good marks. So if at all you had attended our classes by now, I know where you are, you're just smiling. Because all these concepts, we had already looked at them. So anytime, just to give you a brief concepts on what we did, under capital budgeting, these two concepts must always tend to click at the back of our mind. Talk about under capital budgeting, we're saying the three concepts must always click at the back of our mind. These concepts, of course, you can check as what we mentioned. Basically, we'll be talking of what? The aspect to do with, number 1, talk about aspect to do with traditional methods. These are literally traditional methods. When you are talking about traditional methods, these are non-discounted methods, right? Non-discounted methods. And under non-discounted methods, what you must always recall is that we said I'll be talking of, number 1, talk about the payback period. And number 2, we talked about the concepts to do with the accounting rate of return. Talk about accounting rate of return, okay? ARR. These are methods or basically capital budgeting techniques. And number 1, we're talking about traditional techniques or methods, which ideally we are referring to them as non-discounted methods. And number 2, we talked about discounted techniques, or talk about modern techniques or methods. And under modern techniques, basically, we are talking about discounted techniques. We are talking about what? Discounted techniques. If at all you can remember what we mentioned under discounted techniques, basically, my good students, at this point you should always have in mind that we'll be talking of these methods, which will include, number 1, we'll be talking of what you normally refer to it as the net present value, NPV. Talk about number 2, we normally tend to talk about the concept of IRR, internal rate of return. Also, this case, you can also work it out using what? The modified internal rate of return, MIRR. Talk about the other bit we normally talk about is, of course, profitability index. Profitability index being our number 3 method. And number 4 method, if at all you can recall what we mentioned, we also talked about key element that we refer to it as what? Discounted payback period. Discounted payback period. So literally, these are the methods under modern techniques, or rather discounted techniques. So you can see that the question that I want us basically to handle, which was attested in December 2023, covered majority of this bit. Actually, it covered MIRR. It also covered profitability index, as well as what? The discounted payback period. So this is what was covered in December 2023 exams, and this is what I want us to look at. So I won't go into details because we have these concepts already. So let's jump straight and see what we will be expected, or rather what you expected to cover in this question of ours. It really takes very minimal time, and you'll find that the concept will always be very, very easy for us. Okay? So I've literally shared the question with us on the screen, which I believe is very visible. So these are what you're required to do, my good students. Part A, we've already handled part A of the question. So go to part B. Literally, these are what you were told, that Pemma Limited is considering investing in one of the following two mutually exclusive projects. The relevant cash flows of each of the projects are as shown in the table below, which in this case, I am given the annual cash flows of project X and project Y. The initial investments I'm given at that point, plus cash flows as well. Cash flows I'm given in different years, they were was given there. Then additional information, a good examiner is telling us that the firm's cost of capital is 15%. Note 2, the cash flows accrue at the end of the year. Then required, a good examiner wanted us to compute the following for each project. That is discounted payback period, modified internal rate of return, as well as profitability index. So this is what our good examiner basically wants us to compute. So we are going to agree that Mwalimu will be doing for one project, whereas the other project will just be the same as the other project. So I'm going to do for one project, then you're going to do for Mwalimu for the other project, okay? So literally, this is what I need to do. I'm just going to squeeze this question here for us to have it, believing that it's still visible. We are given everything. We are given everything. So we start by working out our first component, which examiner wanted us to work out, and that is what? Discounted payback period, right? Discounted payback period. So at any given point in time, whenever we are talking about payback period, by this time we should be able to understand that payback period is literally the duration of time that me as an investor, it will take for me to recoup all the investments that I had. That time period that it will take for me as an investor to recoup my investment. This is what you're referring to as a payback period. Remember, payback period traditionally, that is under an undiscounted payback. But whenever you hear about discounted payback period, meaning that the only difference is that at this time round, we'll be talking of what? The discounted cash flows. So what you should have in mind is, whenever we are talking about payback period, whenever you hear about payback period, that is, of course, we'll be looking at it in two scenarios. We'll be looking at scenario where I am having our regular cash flows, and I'll be looking at scenario where we are having what? Irregular cash flows. Irregular cash flows. Okay? So for regular cash flows, basically, this will be very easy. We want to know basically how long it will take for us to recoup our initial investments, right? So this will be very easy. And why is Mwalimu saying that this will be very easy? Because this case, we are assuming that our cash flows, literally, we are receiving same cash flows throughout the period. So whatever that you're going to take, I'm going to consider our initial investment. We are going to consider our initial investment. Initial investment. we are going to divide by our aspect of what? Annual cash flows. Annual cash flows. This is a scenario where my cash flows are regular. Scenario where our cash flows are irregular, how are we going to work it out? At this point, you'll find that you're going to use that method of accumulating our cash flows. We'll be using the method of what? Accumulating the cash flows up to the time that it will reach to give us what? Our initial investments. Now, when we are talking about the discounted payback period, I'm just giving you the flow so that you can understand. When you're talking about discounted payback period, now what you should be able to understand is that at this time round, I'll be using what? Discounted cash flows. I'll be talking of the discounted cash flows. Discounted cash flows. Discounted cash flows. And in this context, we are talking about what? The present value of our cash flows. That is what we'll be looking at. We'll be talking about what? The present value of our cash flows. That is in relation to aspect of payback period. So in this case, I want us to go straight and basically work out what our good examiner wanted us to do. Remember, it is important. It's not just about working out the question, but it is important for us to understand what we are working out, right? So Mwalimu has mentioned that you're going to do for project 1 only, which in this case only the first project, then the other project you're going to do it by your own, because the concept is just the same. The whole idea here is for us to basically do what? Understand the concept clearly, okay? So in this case, I'm having, of course, our period. First of all, you can start with our period as per what the examiner has given us. I'm doing for project, the first project, which is project X. So allow me to have it there, project X. So I'm having our period. In this case, we are talking about our initial investment. First of all, in this case, I'm having our period, which is year 0. Year 0, literally, in this case, you are looking at what? Our initial investment. So that will give us our initial investment. So this is our initial investment. So about our cash flows. So I'm having year 0, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, up to year 6. This is what we're having. Looking at our cash flows, I'm given for project X, I'm having, of course, this is 57,750. Our figures are in thousands. That is an outlay. 37,500. 16,500. That is a negative cash flow. I'm talking of 30,000. We are talking of 22,500 here. We are talking of 9,000. We are talking of 7,500 at that point. You see what you are given? So once I have that in mind, the other thing that I need to consider literally here is the discount rate. So we need to determine our discount rate factor. So this is a case where we're talking about what? Present value interest factor. Our rate, we are given a rate of 15%. The firm's cost of capital is 15%. So having this, I can literally now remove our question. I can now literally remove our question at this point. I can literally remove our question because we now have everything. We have everything now. Because, number one, you need to understand that at this point, whenever I'm talking about present value interest factor, whenever I'm talking about present value interest factor, what should come at the back of our mind at this point, given our rate and number of years, we should be remembering the concept of 1 plus r raised to power negative n. At any given point, you're talking about what? At any given point, you're talking about the aspect of present value interest factor. So, in this case, you can either use your table That's the reason why you will always be given the table in exams, or you can use your calculator. I want to show you a very beautiful shortcut here. So I'm having my present value interest factor 15%, right? So in this case, of course, we can start with year 1. So year 1, I'm going to take my calculator. I'm having 1 plus 1 plus 0.15, which will give us what? 1.15, right? Raised to power -1, which will give me into 2 decimal places. I'm having 0.8696. The next thing that I need to do, I won't repeat this again. All I'll be required to do, my good students, now is just to take the first answer that I have, I divide by 1 plus r. You take your first answer, and this I've been teaching you all through. You divide by 1 plus r. My 1 plus r is 1.15. This will give me, for the second year, which is 0.7561. So the next thing that I'll be doing, see this magic, I'll just be clicking equal sign. Give me the third period, 0.6575, equal sign, 0.57, basically 18, equal sign, 0.4972, equal sign, 0. Basically, of course, I'm having 0.4323. You can confirm with your calculator, or rather you can confirm with your table. You can confirm with your table. You can confirm with your table. It is as if, assuming you're doing for year 6. If I told you want to confirm, you just take 1 plus r, which is 1.15, you raised to power -6. 0.4323. You see, as simple as that. Once I have this, literally, I can now say that you can comfortably come and determine our present value of our cash flows. So that in this case, if I told you to talk for year 1, I'll just be having then 37,500. We multiply by 0.8696 to give me 32,610. The other period basically I'll be having here, that is, of course, we've taken 37,500 times 0.8696 to give us 36,210. I'm having -16,500. We multiply by 0.7561. This will literally give me -12,476, right? Believing that you're on the same page with Molimu. 30,000 times 0.5718. This one will literally give me 17,154. 22,500 we multiply by 0.5718. This one will literally give me 12,866. Proceed to the next year, which is basically 9,000 times basically 0.4972. This one will literally give me 4475. 7,500 we multiply by 0.4323. This one will literally give us 3242. These are literally our discounted cash flows, and using the discounted cash flows, it will enable us to determine our discounted payback period. To enable us to determine our discounted payback period. So you've said, or we can agree, that I am having here basically what? Irregular cash flows. So we use the cumulative method here. We use what? The cumulative method at that point. Using our cumulative method, that is to say, Year 1, I'll be having 32,610. Year 2, I'll be having 32,610 minus 12,476. This should give us 20,134. We have not yet reached our initial outlay of 57,750, right? We go to year 3, that should give us 21,134 plus 17,154. In this case, I'll be having 37,288. We've not yet reached our target value plus 12,866. This will give us a value of I'm reaching now 50,154 after adding the 12,866. Have we reached 57? We've not yet reached 57. So I'm going to add 44,75. In this case, this should give us what? 54,629. We have not yet reached 57. What about if we add 3242? If we add 3242, it is to say I'm having 57,871. So we can agree and say that at this time around, my good students, you'll find that my payback period here, payback period will be as follows. Up to year 5, I've not yet reached my initial investment. So I'll be having here 5 years, first of all. When are we reaching our 57,750? You can realize that 57,750, I am reaching it in year 6 because this one will surpass the 57,750. So what are we going to do? This will be very simple. You remember the assumption of payback period. We normally assume that cash flows, we normally earn them evenly. The cash flows accrue evenly. So in this event, that is to say, if at all it is evenly, this is what? This is what? Monthly. So this is what you're going to say. In year 6, that in the period of year 6, that is where I'll be recouping our initial investment of 5750. So before we reach year 6, before we reach this period, how much had we attained? Before period 6, my cumulative cash flow was 54,629. So the question I'm going to ask myself is, how much have I remained with to reach what? Our initial investment. So my balance here will be 57, or rather that is of course 57,750 with less our cumulative of 54,629. So how much have I remained with to reach our initial investment? I have remained with basically a value of 57,750 minus 54,629, which will give us 3121. That is 3121, right? So I have remained with 3121 for us to reach our initial investment of 5750. Look at this case. These are where you should pay a very keen attention, my good students. In year 6, I am earning 3242, right? With the assumption of payback period that these cash flows accrued evenly, we can agree and say this, that the 3242 is for 12 months. 3242 is for 12 months. So how long will it take us for us to earn the balance? 3121. This will translate to how many months? I'll pick my calculator very easily. That will say, that is to say, I'll be having 3121 times 12. divide here by 3242, which will give us basically 11.5 months, right? That is, of course, 11.5 months. 11.5 months. 11.5 months. So in this case, I'm having 5 years, of course, and like 11 months, right? So 11.5 months. So alternatively, in this case, that is to say 11.5 divided by 12, this translates to like 5.9 years, right? So this one will translate to like 5.99 years. Or simply, you can do it in this case. I'm having 5 years and 11.5 months. Or simply, you can use the concept of what? The concept of the ranges. For you to be very accurate at this point, again, you can use the other method of what? Of the ranges. First of all, at that point, yes, you have determined that. But better still, you can use what? The concept of the ranges. And how will this concept of range apply, my good student? The concept of range will be very easy. Will be very easy. Will be very easy. Will be very easy. Simply, I have the difference first of all, which we have determined, right? The other case we can take here is this concept. We take our range because we are earning it in between this period. So I'm earning it between a range of 54,629 to 57,871, right? We are earning it in that range. So ideally, this will give us a difference of how much? Determine that difference. I'll be having 57,871 minus 54,629. What you're having here, right? Which will give us 3242. Which will give us 3242. 3242. So having that case, it as if we'll be talking of the difference which you are determining here, 3121, we divide by 3242, which would give us how many months? 3121 divided by 3242, which in this case will give us what? 0.96 months, almost the same as what you had it here, right? Remember, like if you translate this, 11.5 divided by 12 is giving us almost the same value, right? So we can agree and say here that my discounted payback period will be talking of the 5 years, the one that we had, 5.96 years. 5.96 years. 5.96 years. That is the time that it will take us for us to earn our money back, discounted payback period. So you can either use this 5 years 11 months, 5 years 11.5 months, or rather 5 years 115 months, or you can use the 5.96 years, whichever case that you select. Because remember, if you convert 11.5 months, it's giving us what? Like 0.96 months. So the same case is what you can work it out here, 0.96 years, right? So basically, this is what you're supposed to do for discounted payback period. As simple as that. You can use either of the method. So once you are done with that, we've literally handled part 1 of the question, right? If at all you can proceed to part 2 of the question, which is also very interesting, and Mwalimu will also want to handle it in this case here. Part 2 of the question, let me share the question here. This now is the most interesting part. This is the most interesting part. Look at part 2. Part 2 of the question, you are asked to work out the modified internal rate of return. The modified internal rate of return. Modified internal rate of return. So anytime we are talking of, let me have this one here, down here. This one here we've agreed that discounted payback period, we've literally agreed to be 5.96 years, right? That's what you've taken. So you're saying that working out marginal internal, or rather modified internal rate of return, the modified internal rate of return, you'll find that this is literally an extension of IRR, right? IRR is simply that rate that will equate our NPV to be 0. That is IRR, the rate that will equate our NPV to be 0. And because of several limitations that we normally tend to have for IRR, that is where we normally tend to apply what? The modified internal rate of return. That is what you're terming it as MIRR. The beauty part with MIRR, my good student, is this. You'll find that while IRR assumes that all cash flows are reinvested at the project's rate of return, MIRR allows for different rates for reinvestment. Remember, we said that IRR is always what? Basically trial and error method. We've done several questions for IRR. So if at all you're having a clear concept of IRR, MIRR will be very easy, because just what? The modified internal rate of return. So determining our MIRR, this one is always very simple. Our modified internal rate of return, we should always be able to remember our total future value, we divide by, my good students, what? Initial outlay at this point. All these these are root period n, right? Minus 1. This will literally give us our MIRR. Another case, see this case, very simple. Still, you can take this. Other student will take it and say that MIRR, Mwalimu, I know very well that I need to determine our total future value, divide by our initial outlay here, divide by our initial outlay at this point, right? All this raised to power 1 over n minus 1. Still the same thing, right? Still the same thing. So you can literally work out marginal, or rather modified internal rate of return, either using this or this, depending on what you need to do, or the one that you feel it is much easier for you, right? So having mentioned that, my good students, we should remember that ascertaining basically the future value, then the compound interest approach will always tend to apply. Compound interest approach will always apply, right? So remember, we are doing for project X. You're going to do for Mwalimu for the other project. Let us do it. I believe that all of us, we are following the right steps of Mwalimu, right? So these are what you're supposed to do. The moment I've noted that I need to have this, so it will be upon us to determine our future value, right? So allow Mwalimu to erase this point. Allow Mwalimu to erase this point, so that in this case, I'll want us basically to work out our future value. And if you can recall, for future value, we should always be talking of the aspect of future value. The future value, talk about future value interest factor. We should always be able to recall the aspect of course, 1 plus, basically this is what? These are literally compounding, right? So I'm having R raised power what? Raised power n. right? These are what you must always tend to recall. These are what you must always tend to recall, right? So at this point, allow me to erase this point. Allow me to erase this kindly. Allow me to erase this. But this one we are going to use it for profitability index, but it's okay. Allow me to erase first of all that bit. But this case for present value, remember, is going to affect us, or rather to help us in what? In a PI, right? So basically, after having this case, these are what you're supposed to do. These are what you're supposed to do. I need my future value. I need our future value. I need our future value. Interest factor given our discount rate of 15%. Given our discount rate of 15%. So how will our future value apply, my dear students? These are always the most interesting bit to the future value, right? These are always the most interesting part with the future value. So this will be very easy because our factor here will be the first instant, that is for year one, right? Talk about year one. How long, or rather, in this case, if at all this project is going, this project literally is going for 6 years, right? This project is literally going for 6 years, the way you can see it there. So my question here is, how long has it remained? If I told you to look at the end of year one, how long do we have for this project basically to still, or rather to, it has remained, we're looking at how long has it remained for this project basically to what? To end, right? The life period of this project. The life period of this project is 6 years. So therefore, we can agree and see that at the end of year one, I'm going to take 1 plus 0.15, right? Raised to power 5. I've remained with 5 years. If I told you to look at the end of year 2, our future, the future that has remained is literally 4 years. At the end of year 3, the future that has remained is basically what? 3 years. At the end of year 4, we have remained with a future of what? 2 years. At the end of year 5, basically, in this case, you're talking about what? A future of 1 year that has remained. So that whenever you're looking at the end of year 6, in this case, you'll find that the period has elapsed. The period has literally elapsed. Future value, right? And this is the most interesting part to the future value. So therefore, we can agree and say that after Mwalimu has done all this for us, this will be very easy for us to work it out. Because you can either basically use the table, or you can do it here directly. I'm having 1.15 raised to power 5, which in this case will give me what? 2.0114, at least with 4 decimal places, right? In this case, I literally have 1.15 raised to power 4. In this case, I'll be having what? 1.7490. I believe that we are all on the same page, right? Believing that we are all on the same page as Mwalimu. Take your time, get it right. Take your time, get it right. And make sure whenever you're feeling you're not getting it right, it is always very important for you to do what? To ask, right? So, after understanding this, Mwalimu can literally use a shortcut, right? So in this case, I'm going to have, let me work it out. I wanted us to understand this. So year 1, I'm having 1.15 raised to power 5, which will give us what? 2.011. I just divide by 1 plus r, which is 1.15, to give us 1.7490. I'll just be clicking equal sign. 1.5209 equal sign 1.3225 equal sign 1.1500 equal sign 1. See? just to make our work easier. First of all, you understand the concept, then you can use what? The Mwalimu shortcut. So once I have this, my good student, the next step will be very simple, right? We determine our future value cash flows. So our future value cash flows, our task now will be very easy, because the first case I'll be taking the 7,500 times 2.0114, which will literally give us basically 75,428. 16,500 I multiply by, that is negative 16,500, we multiply by 1.7490. This should give us 28,859 negative. I'm having basically 30,000 times 1.5209. This should give us 45,627, right? The other case we should be talking of course, 1.3225 times 22,500 to give us basically 29,756. Talk about 9,000 by 1.1500 to give us, of course, 10,350. Then lastly, of course, should give us 7,500. Believing that, guys, are on the same page. Believing that we are on the same page. Believing that we are on the same page. Yeah, believing that we are on the same page. So the moment I have that case, what will be our future value? We sum it up. We sum this one up. We sum this one up. So to sum this one up, I should be talking of 75,428 minus 28,859 plus 45,627 plus 29,756 plus 10,350 plus 7,500. This will give us 139,802. 139,802. So once I have that, I'm going now to apply this formula of ours. Right? We are going to apply this formula of ours. So allow me to use the first formula, which in this case I'll be having my total future value, which is 139,802, because that is what we determined, 139,802. We divide by our initial outlay, which is what? 57,750, right? In this case, I'm having all this root what? N. My end period is 6 years, right? Minus 1, minus 1, minus 1, minus 1. That will give us our marginal, or rather modified internal rate of return. That will give us a modified internal rate of return, which in this case, my good students, you're getting a value of how much? If at all, we can take 139,802, we divide by 57,750. I need to determine the root 6, so I'm having basically literally, I'll be talking, of course, of that is, of course, 6, right? Of course, shift my value there, answer, to give me 1.158. So I'm having literally 1.1588 minus 1. So minus 1, this should give us our value, which is 0.1587, right? Which this one will translate, this is 88, which if I told you to translate it into percentage, ideally we are talking of what? 15.88%. 15.88%. This is our modified internal rate of return. Modified internal rate of return. So this is what you are supposed to do up to that point, my good students. This is what you are supposed to do up to that point. Of course, the next step or the next question here, which in this case, allow Mwalimu to give this one out for us to work it out. The profitability index. I know very well we are very familiar with profitability index. Because anytime you read about profitability index, ideally, we just want to look at the ratio of the present value of cash inflows to the initial investment. Ideally, talk about PI. Talk about PI here. Profitability index, ideally, we just want to look at the ratio of the present value of cash inflows to our initial outlay. That is to say, PI, we should be talking of our present value of cash inflows. Present value of cash inflows. We divide by our initial outlay. We divide by our initial outlay here. We divide by our initial outlay. We divide by our initial outlay. Like, remember, we are determining our factor here, and we had already determined our present value, so that Mwalimu was a rest. So we determine our total present value. We divide by our initial outlay. That should give us what? Our PI. So that is what you're supposed to do in this question. You can literally see earning the 20 marks was very easy for this, right? Earning the 20 marks was very easy for this. So that's it for today. I want us to meet in our next session, whereby we are going to handle a whole different and very interesting concept still in our paper December 2023 exams. Remember, right now, for those who are willing, or for those who wish to join our classes, you can start as soon as possible. We have all these videos, recorded version, which will help you, which will really help you to prepare for these papers. Remember, nowadays, the semester is always very short. So as soon as you start, the better for you. And of course, if you need more, the videos for financial management, you can always reach us out. Our number is indicated just below this video. You see the number there? This is this number. If at all you can contact this number below here, you can literally get in touch and we will assist you guys. To this point, thank you so much, and let us meet in our next class. Bye-bye.